We are 1 week away from Selection Sunday. Time flies when you're having fun, as they say. It was not so fun for me, Brad, to watch Siena season go up in flames today in a tough loss to Iona, but really fun season overall. Never fun to see a season come to an end, especially a little earlier than you wanted to. But it was a team that was easy to be proud of all year, and so shout out to my guys back home in the 518 for balling. Hopefully they can get it done next year. Northwestern's not going to provide me a lot of fun. At least Vic Law's healthy. But 14 seed. I'll be at United Center on Wednesday night. I don't know why I'm going to punish myself, but I am. We're gonna see Northwestern basketball at least one more time this season. So we'll see what happens. It looks like none of our three teams will be in the NCAA tournament, save an incredible run from Northwestern or Providence in the conference tournament. So that's a little depressing, Brad. But otherwise, how are things?
Pretty good. I mean, finally, Cooley turns to the lineup I've been asking for the whole year. Last game and a half, and put Malik White at point guard and benched Ashton Langford. And the past game and a half has gone pretty well. So maybe we found something there, but probably not. Probably, in one of the Big East tournament games, we'll go eight minutes without scoring, and we'll be back to where we started. But I'm kind of mixed feelings of if I just want this Providence season to end quickly, or if I actually am going to watch them in the NIT. Who knows? But the one bid league conference championships were exciting, and I emphasize one bid league because none of them are going to get at-large bids.
Yeah, I mean, every time one of them loses, it's just like, oh, they should get an at-large. And like the only one I will stand for is Belmont. I think Belmont, like the metrics are there, the wins are pretty much there. They have one name winning into UCLA. They have three really good mid-major wins over Murray State, and then they beat Lipscomb twice. I mean, I think Belmont should be in. I don't know if they will be, but I mean, it's definitely a hard look to put in a team with 15 losses or more over a team with 5. And obviously, like we've talked about it, like it's not just a counting losses game. You have to win games to get into the tournament against good teams, and Belmont, had a chance and they didn't do it. But at the same time, I think it would be pretty egregious if this Belmont team doesn't get in. I'm not getting my hopes up like some people, because I feel like at this point, kind of in the machine, it just becomes this argument of like all year you hear people say like, oh, the 26-4 team should get in, or like the 26-6 teams get in, just so they can be really angry on Selection Sunday when it doesn't happen. Like there's just no reason for me to be optimistic anymore that teams are going to get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it's a really interesting because people say that people want to see fans want to see Belmont in, fans want to see Lipscomb in, and I don't think that's true. I think that they say they want to see them in, but I don't know if when it comes down to two games, one is between the big brands, one is between the mid majors. I think most people, I think a vast majority, are going to side with watching the big brands. I'm interested to see the ratings of Murray State Belmont versus Michigan State, and obviously Michigan State is going to be more. But I want to see kind of the disparity. I mean, personally, I was watching Murray State Belmont. I have no intention of ever watching two Big Ten teams play each other again this year. I'm just all Big Ten'd out. But I'm interested to see if people actually want this, or just say they want this. And
I mean, I think people want a Loyola Chicago story. They want a Belmont story. They don't really care about like the 6-11 Loyola Chicago versus Miami, Florida game like last year. They don't really care about Belmont versus, and I'm trying to think of like a 5-12 Belmont game that they could get stuck in, or like a 6-11 game, like
Kansas State.
Yeah, sure, Kansas State. Like people don't care about that game. They want to be on like a bandwagon though in like the Sweet 16. I think that's really what it's about. Because like Loyola Miami had juice because like Loyola's a Chicago team. They won the Valley, which is a pretty big league that has pretty big TV ratings in terms of like the championship game. So like, Loyola was a little bit more of a known quantity, and like Like I think people want those runs. They don't care about that one game. Like that game had a little juice. It didn't have incredible juice. It was like a Thursday afternoon game. It was a game people were watching. It was a game that all the people I talked to I had convinced to hop on the Loyola bandwagon. But like people, I think you're right in that people don't care about like the one individual game. They care about the run. And there's a lot more juice, I think, in a Belmont run to the Sweet 16 than there is in a TCU run to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, but then there's even more juice with like a UCLA run or something, right? I mean, the fan bases are just so much bigger, and the brand just attracts so much casual attention that
that's fair.
But kind of the more interesting thing for me that I wanted to talk about was, people when they're talking about Lipscomb's resume and they're saying things like, "Oh, they won at SMU. That's a good win." Like, Kevin, imagine if you tweeted a team's win over SMU or just like SMU in general was like a good team. Imagine what people would say to you. Or like in the case of Belmont, like if you tweeted that like UCLA, like if you were tweeting in like support of Washington and say Washington and won at UCLA, right? People, who cares? UCLA stinks. But when a mid-major, beats a UCLA or even like SMU, which they were bringing up on the Lipscomb broadcast today, people want that to be worth something. On the Gardner Webb broadcast, they're saying that they beat Georgia Tech and Wake Forest. They said they had big wins against Wake Forest. I mean, Wake Forest in the Big South is like a fourth place team. It's crazy.
I totally buy that. I mean, I was thinking about this like the other day. I was thinking about how like people would value Northwestern as a good win for any mid-major. Like if any mid-major beats Northwestern, like there would be legit like buzz about that win. Like in the selection committees, people are like, oh, look at that quadrant 1 road win at Northwestern. But like when Indiana losing at Northwestern is like some heinous defeat for their resume. And like it's totally unfair. And like I obviously understand the part of it where it's like these teams don't get opportunities. So you have to highlight every time they do beat a good team. And like Lipscomb beating SMU is a better win than they're getting in their league other than Liberty. Lipscomb getting a win over SMU is better than beating Liberty, or better than anyone but Liberty, But like, it still doesn't have that much juice other than saying, well, look, you can beat a high major team. So, I mean, I totally buy it, but it's also, I mean, like you have to value like beating UCLA because that's the only team Belmont was given a chance to play. But you can't value it by like in comparison to like the resume of like an Indiana having beaten Michigan State and Wisconsin and those teams.
Yeah, I just like the dichotomy between mid-major beats a specific high major. It's a great win. Anyone else beats that high major, and it's like, who cares? It's just super transparent to me. Like people were pointing out that Belmont has 12 road wins, which I counted last night. 6 of them, I think, were against teams rated lower than 250. So it was like at that. I mean, like people did the same thing with the Middle Tennessee last year, but like a win at 339th ranked Kennesaw State is literally meaningless. I mean, you might as well bring up their 50-point win against Trevecca Nazarene. It's just absolutely. It's just meaningless. And I mean, there are certain things with Belmont's resume that you can point to that look good, like their metrics or the fact that they won at Murray State. I saw that they had a nice quadrant 1 and 2 record. It was like 5-3. They swept Lipscomb. But when you start like kind of making up these qualifications and like kind of bending and like twisting a team's merits, it gets to a point kind of like the center for Liberty today. His name escapes me. That like
Scotty
crazy
James.
Flop, where it's like Scotty James, where like maybe you had a case and then you just went so over the top and did something so stupid and like ridiculous that now everyone's laughing at you.
That was one of the most heinous flops I've ever seen. And like I thought there actually was contact when I watched it like on TV, but then I rewatched the replay. I don't actually think there was any contact. Like I think it's 50-50. Like he wasn't touched at all. and he just like went flying. Like he started to move before the contact would have occurred on the run by. So like I don't understand like what the call would even be. It was absurd. But I mean, I did do a blind resume. I got texted from a very good friend, Jake Liker, who does bracketology for WNUR Sports. He sent me a great blind resume of it wound up being NC State, Belmont, and Temple. And I chose Temple over I ranked it basically Temple, Belmont, NC State based on the rankings they gave me, because the only thing that was going for NC State was their net. Everything else was bad. They didn't have Belmont didn't have a great win, but they had a good, they're as you said 5-3 versus Q1 and Q2. Their two bad losses aren't great, but NC State has the same number of like quote unquote bad losses against Georgia Tech and Wake. I think the thing that will be frustrating is if they come over and say, look at all these bad losses, like you couldn't get over the bad losses for Belmont against Green Bay and Jacksonville State, I think were the two quadrant threes. Like if you say that you can't get over those two losses when Washington lost to Cal and NC State lost to Wake at Georgia Tech, like it's just clear power conference bias to me.
Yeah, I'm totally off the NC State should be in bandwagon. I was never really on it in terms of their resume. I really liked them in the preseason and thought that they would get in until very recently. Being last in a strength of schedule or like second to last for a non-conference, I mean, you have to punish that team. That's just such a horrible precedent. They did it a few years ago with SMU. I remember they had like this horrible non-conference schedule. And it was a very similar situation to NC State this year, where on like mock brackets and stuff, they were like 8 seed, 9 seed, like pretty safe. And all of a sudden, like mid-February, it was like a snap of the fingers. It was like, well, wait a minute. We're actually going to move this team all the way out because they have like the worst non-conference strength of schedule. And I remember thinking when that happened at SMU, it was almost like Lunardi got like inside information from the committee, like, hey, I know that you have SMU here. We're going to leave them out because of this schedule, barring, a super strong finish to the season where they get these crazy wins. So I would start preparing people for that now. It kind of feels the same way with NC State.
I definitely do think there's a fair kind of idea of the committee leaking to some of the prominent bracketologists, just so that people are prepared for teams to be left out of the field. Like if you can be like pissed off that like a certain team doesn't make the field, but if every single bracketologist has like Belmont in, and then the day of Belmont doesn't get in, people are going to be pissed. So you can like limit that a little more if you leak. So I think that's a fair point actually. It was a lot of. Yeah.
Just one last thing on NC State I wanted to bring up, and I promise this. I will try to contain my, sub 500 team should be out of the NCAA tournament rule here. But Kevin McNamara, the Providence beat writer, he had a tweet that and NC State. All right, so the ACC, right? So there's 15 teams. So you play 14 teams once, or you play everyone once, but 4 teams you play twice.
Yes.
So 3 of the teams that NC State played twice, it was like Boston College, Wake Forest, and Pittsburgh. So that was right. Mm-hmm. Think about how improbable that is, that you get 3 of like the 4 worst teams twice, and they only got Duke in Virginia once. Now imagine if right. So NC State with the current proposed rule that under 500 wouldn't be allowed in, right? They're 9-9, so they would be able to play in the NCAA tournament. Now, if you just switched one of those games against Pittsburgh for a second game versus Duke, and they go 8-10, they would be ineligible. But does a win against Pitt make them any more worthy than a loss against Duke would? Like why are we saying that the schedule makers gave them the super generous schedule, but that second win against Pittsburgh would be enough kind of proof or enough kind of validation to put them in? And if they had played Duke and lost, then it would be a totally different story. It's just such a horrible, horrible idea.
Wait, but Brad, I thought that every good mid-major team would go over 500 in a Power 5 league, no matter what their schedule.
I mean, people were saying about that Belmont Murray State game last night, like, oh, how can you watch these two teams against another bubbled, compared to comparable bubble teams and say that this is a better, this isn't a better game. I mean, that looked like two bubble teams to me. I've watched a lot of Big East bubble basketball.
Neither team's
they are great. Yeah, they're not that much different than like Creighton or Minnesota or Arizona State. Like they're not on a whole different plane than those teams.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I thought it was a really, really good basketball game. Like it was super high level, it was fun, it was competitive, and that's like what we want to see in March. But it was I didn't think either team looked like a world beater yesterday. Like I didn't think either team deserved to be like some sort of top 25 team that was just being slept on because they play in a terrible league. Like I don't know. I don't know your thoughts on the game, but I thought it was. I really did like. I thought it was entertaining. I just didn't think either team hit enough shots to be like to make it incredible. I mean, Ja was Ja. He needed to score in that game, and he did. Turned it over a little bit too much for me. I think the guy that gets slept on for Murray is Shaq Buchanan. I love that kid. He's athletic. He shoots the ball. He defends. I mean, he only had 5 points in that game, but I felt like he was so impactful. I mean, Windler didn't shoot it great, but I mean, he's been absurd. Remember, Belmont was without Nick Muszynski, who's one of their best bigs, averaged like 15 a game. So I mean, that was a really fun basketball game overall, Brad.
It was. I thought both Murray State and Belmont were better than Lipscomb and in Liberty. I thought both those teams were on a higher tier than that A-Sun championship game.
Yeah,
and I think that Muszynski. I think that loss was the difference because they're a replacement Adelsberger. I mean, I don't think he played a ton. I think that they went with Derek Saban, the freshman, more. At least that's what it seemed like watching the game.
I think they split minutes pretty evenly.
I mean, he missed those two dunks early in the game. He got bailed out on the foul on one of them, but it was just clear that Muszynski in there would have been a different game.
And Muszynski blocks over 2 shots a game. So, I mean, that's something to definitely keep track of, given the fact that Belmont, gave up a lot at the rim in that game. Murray didn't shoot the ball well, but they got to the rim pretty well. I mean, Muszynski in 25 minutes averages 2.2 blocks a game. So, I mean, he's a super impactful rim protector as well. So I think that's not something to be slept on. But, credit Matt McMahon. He did a really good job with this group. I thought early in the first half, Belmont was like the clearly better team, and then Ja obviously made a ton of plays, and Tevin Brown hit a shot or two that was really big. I think the Cowart kid is really good, just kind of a big old roll man. I like him a lot. So that was a really good basketball game. I think it was probably the best of the championship game so far.
Yeah, he was really effective in the post, especially early in the game. I remember him getting a few touches around the rim in a converting before Ja got going. But yeah, I mean, this was good. I mean, both these teams were good. I think both these teams are on par with any other bubble team. And Murray State, probably 12, maybe 13. Maybe they can pull off a nice 5-12 upset. I agree. This was probably the best game. I think the worst game was Northern Iowa and Bradley.
Oh, you're a hater.
I mean, that wasn't even that entertaining, especially those reviews at the end. Just sapped the whole game. There was 2 out of bounds reviews. There was the bullshit flagrant 4 shots in the ball back. That was insanity. Because they called like a dead ball technical on top of a foul.
Yes,
that was bananas. And then the review at the end. I mean, the replay guy did a horrible job. I couldn't tell when the ball went out of bounds. If it was on the shot by the Northern Iowa player falling down, or if it was like after. I had no idea what was going on, and that review took like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I couldn't tell whether that ball went out. Just so I think they were right to keep that call on the floor before, like, because the ball bounced, and they said that went out there before it went off of the Bradley player's head on the ground. I really did think that. I think that ball had a very good chance of having bounced in first, which would have been huge because it would have given Northern Iowa a shot. But, I mean, You just obviously haven't watched enough ugly Big Ten basketball. And I watched a lot of Valley and Big Ten this year, so I'm fully used to teams not having enough shot makers, and I think that's the really big challenge in the Valley this year, and that's why the league was down. Was with the exception of Marcus Towns, I would say there was just no one in the league who consistently just could get a bucket. I mean, AJ Green is getting there for Northern Iowa, but he's a freshman. I mean, Southern Illinois
recruit.
Yeah, so Southern Illinois had a couple of guys. Missouri State had a couple of guys, but like there was no like elite shot makers. And so that's just what made a lot of these games ugly. And then the Valley plays the slowest tempo in the country. They just play a lot of rock fights, and this was as expected. I mean, credit to Bradley for kind of changing it up, changing the tempo, getting some easier looks after just really struggling early. I thought Lodier, Agunyale, and Luquan Lundy were just terrific in terms of their energy. Childs made some big plays as well. So I mean, this game was ugly, but I mean, it was a rock fight, which made it a lot of fun for me to watch, even though it wasn't maybe pretty basketball. Yeah, good for Bradley. I think Bradley could sneak onto the 14 line. I know everyone has him as a 15 and maybe even a 16 right now. But I was taking a look and just kind of allotting seeds basically. And basically the MEAC, the SWAC, the MAC, the AA MAC, that is, the NEC, the Summit now that Mike Daum's out, and South Dakota State, the Southland, and I would say probably the Big South with Gardner-Webb are all below Bradley on the seed list. So that's 7 right there. You need 3 more to bump to the 14 line. So if the America East loses Vermont, they'll be below. If Montana goes out in the Big Sky tournament, they'd be that league's auto bid would be below. Anyone but UC Irvine from the Big West would be below. The Horizon League and Patriot could definitely fall below as well. They're kind of 50-50, and the Valley's a better league than either of those leagues. So if you just get to 10 auto bids below you, Bradley could sneak onto the 14 line and be a little bit of an interesting upset pick just because they've won 9 of 11. They're playing better. I don't know if they have enough shot makers, but I think they could win a game.
Yeah, I don't think that enough people talk about how good of a hire Bradley made with Brian Wardle. I mean, I think I've mentioned a few times on the podcast, but so he had really good teams at Green Bay. He had a guy get drafted in Alec Brown, and I'm pretty sure he coached Alfonso McKinney, who's now sees spot minutes with the Warriors. I think in and out of the rotation there.
And then legend Kiefer Sykes.
Kiefer Sykes as well.
Man,
I think they had one other guy. I think who was a summer league kind of guy. But I mean, they had good teams. He leaves for Bradley, which is kind of a lateral move. I mean, the Valley's a better conference slightly. I'm guessing he probably got a pay raise going to Bradley, but I mean, he's someone who was in the mix for the Marquette job. He played at Marquette. So for Bradley to get him, that was a home run. And in like 3 years, he turned it around and rebuilt Bradley. That's super impressive. And I didn't realize that he had never gotten to the NCAA tournament at Green Bay. I think the first year he left, what's his name? Link Darner? Is that Link? Yeah, Link Darner got there. I think the first year he was there, but Wardle never got there despite having some really good teams.
No, it was that was one of those where like Wardle realized he was losing all his guys and saw a better job that paid better and has better fan base, and he was like, I'm gonna jump and take it.
Parachute.
And then this year, I mean, he started really strong, beat Penn State and SMU, I believe he beat. I'm trying to remember. I think SMU was the other team he beat in the Cancun one. Yeah, he won two good games, 2 up games there. Then they bottom out, lose their first 5 in the Valley, and they start playing a little faster, and he turns it around. So nice job by Brian Wardle. 2 other championships to note here. Radford goes down in the Big South to Gardner-Webb, who wins 2 road games in the conference tournament. They had to play at Campbell because that was the way the Big South, the top seed hosts the quarters and semis, and then the final goes to the highest remaining seed. So they had to go play Campbell, who's the 1 seed. They win that game, and they beat Radford today. I mean, DJ Laster had one of those senior March performances that are always memorable, and shout out to Tim Kraft there. That game wasn't super exciting. It was always kind of Gardner-Webb keeping Radford at a distance, but Gardner Webb punches the ticket and should be probably a 16 seed, maybe 15. They're 170 in net, so right around there.
Yeah, that was a pretty good game. The center for Gardner Webb, kind of a more perimeter oriented guy, had like the game of his life. But Radford, I think, cut it to one possession in the second half. Maybe even tied it. But I mean, Gardner Webb just pulled away. Disappointing for Radford, who I thought was the best team in the Big South, and obviously, from an NCAA tournament perspective, I certainly want this, and I think everyone should want there to be as few conference tournament upsets as possible. So the best teams from the league go to the NCAA tournament, and we get stronger first-round games. But, I mean, Gardner Webb's pretty good. I mean, this isn't like what was it, Furman a few years ago that was like a 9 seed in the SoCon and won 4 games in 4 days. I'm not sure if they ended up winning the championship or not, but they came very close.
Right. I mean, the Big South was – I didn't really think the gap between Campbell and Gardner Webb, like 1 through 4, was very big. I didn't think any of them were win a tournament game. I thought maybe Radford could push somebody. They beat Notre Dame and Texas, but I mean, I wasn't exactly heartbroken by that. So that's a league that doesn't really produce a lot of upsets. So nothing too crazy there. And then the other championship game we have in locked as of Sunday night when we're recording, Liberty over Lipscomb on the road in Nashville. That's a huge win for Liberty. That team was just tough. I mean, Scotty James, love him or hate him for the flop. That guy is a tough dude down low. A Bradley transfer, by the way, which I thought was super interesting. He would have helped that team. But yeah, I mean, Cabell made some big shots. Pacheco Ortiz hit the big 3 in the corner to pretty much ice it. I mean, that's tough for Lipscomb, who I don't think is getting in. I mean, people are going to stand for him. They're going to say, "Oh, they beat TCU. How can you put TCU in over Lipscomb?" Which, I mean, you can't really play that game because it's kind of a messy game to play, but it is something. I mean, Lipscomb's going to really rue that Florida Gulf Coast loss because they didn't lose to Florida Gulf Coast. Their worst loss this year is a home loss to Liberty. Or, yeah, that would be their worst loss of the year. Like, then you have very little case to keep them out, given they'd won at TCU, they won at SMU. They won at Liberty. They had some wins, but, I mean, I just don't know if you can put them in with the horrible loss to Florida Gulf Coast and not winning the conference tournament in a league that's not very good.
Yeah, so, I mean, Liberty, right, four juniors and a senior in their starting lineup. So, I mean, if all those guys come back, obviously except the senior, who I think that was Cobble, right?
Yeah.
But the 4 juniors, I mean, could this be the next Buffalo, right? If James and what was his name, Caleb Holzler and Pacheco, they all come back. I mean, maybe this is a team with an even gaudier record next year.
Yeah, they should be really good. I know Richie McKay's recruiting at a pretty solid level as well. So they play defense. They've got veterans, so they should be pretty solid next year. And really going forward, they also bring back some younger role players like Elijah Cuffey and Darius McGee, who are young guys playing big minutes for them. So I think they should be in pretty good shape to impact things going forward in the ASUN. We'll be interested to see what happens to Lipscomb, who is pretty senior laden. And the other note we just wanted to do on conference tournament wise was South Dakota State going down. That one is as stunning, I think, as anything I've seen in Champ Week so far. I mean, that was one of those where, like, you check the score and it's like, oh, it's a 10-point game. Like, South Dakota State started slow. Like, whatever, not a big deal. They'll come back. And then, the Leathernecks of Western Illinois just kept hitting tough ones.
Yeah, I mean, that's just so crushing, right? Because they were the best team by far in that league.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, now, maybe Fort Wayne with John Contra has the most juice. Maybe Omaha.
There's no juice for any of these teams. I mean, like, draft Twitter will be like, John Conchar, let's watch him. He's 6'5" and does a lot of weird things. But, I mean, I was kind of just like, it was my first time in a while watching South Dakota State, and it just felt like they didn't trust Dom. Like obviously they have Gilbeck on Western Illinois, who's a super good rim protector, and he was very good in this game. He had 13 and 13. But mean, it just felt like they got too reliant on David Jenkins, who's that, combo guard who just chucks everything. He had 29, but it felt to me like they maybe could have, gone the ball inside a little bit more. And down the stretch when they made their run, that was what happened, was they just pushed for quick shots, whether it was Jenkins or Tevin King or even Dom. But I mean, that's just a crusher. I mean, it could really change a lot of things, because it might be a tough look for Nebraska, where TJ Otzelberger was rumored to be headed. If that was going to happen, I mean, that's a tough look to hire him, given the expectations if they just lost to Western Illinois. So that could put some stuff in doubt. I mean, they should be back, South Dakota State, because they have a good recruiting class coming. They'll bring back Jenkins if he doesn't leave early, because he's a sophomore. He's put up big numbers, but I mean, he could be the guy next year. But that one sucks for mid-major fans. That was one where, I root for upsets all the time, but in that one, I was just rooting for South Dakota State. I was like, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to see North Dakota State be in the tournament and be a 16 seed, get hammered by 60. I want some juice.
Yeah, Taylor Braun isn't walking through that door.
But Jordan Hornets, don't sleep on the former Siena Saint. Anyway, let's do the bracket draft. Brad, why don't you explain what we're doing today? Because it's going to be pretty fun.
So people, more of, I think, in the preseason, tossed around the idea, wouldn't it be cool if, instead of having a selection show, the higher seed gets to choose the team that they play, right? So how we were thinking of structuring this is you have the 1 seeds, and according to Bracket Matrix, the number 1 overall seed would be Virginia. So Virginia would have their pick of the 4 16 matchups, right? So they could, the 16 seeds, according to Bracket Matrix, it'd be Gardner-Webb, Sam Houston, and then the playing games between Norfolk and St. Francis, and then Iona and Prairie View. Let's say, UVA thinks that they match up best with Gardner-Webb, right? So then they choose Gardner-Webb, and then Gonzaga, who's the second number 1 overall seed according to Bracket Matrix, chooses between the 3, and so on.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. It'll be interesting to kind of flesh out these matchups, especially for kind of the middle tier, like the 5-12s and the 4-13s, and whether you could create an advantage in those upset slots for the high majors. I think that'd be interesting. Do you want to just take it away from the top, Brad? Or do you want to just find some intriguing matchups and get going?
Well, so I don't think that we should go in order, right? So I don't think it should be, we'll do all the 1 seeds, then all the 2 seeds. I think we should do all the 1 seeds and maybe all the 6 seeds, or all,
right.
Kind of jump around there. So I mean, why don't we start, I guess, with the 1 seeds? I mean, this is probably going to be the least interesting one. We can bang it out of the way. I think if I'm Virginia here, so we're not fully committed to doing it strategically or from entertainment. We're kind of, especially with these lower seeds, kind of mix it in here. I think if I'm Virginia, I want Gardner-Webb, because I think Sam Houston's probably better team. And in terms of the playing games, you have to scout for 2 teams as opposed to 1. I think it would just be easier for them if they got Gardner-Webb.
Yeah, I was gonna say Norfolk / St. Francis PA matchup, but I don't have any issue with Gardner-Webb, so let's go with Gardner-Webb there. I think the one, I guess the one on this line that I really wouldn't want if I'm Virginia is Iona, just because they're the one team that I can see lighting it up from 3. You're obviously not going to stop. I mean, it's going to be tough for them to get stops, but I would imagine that they would have at least a chance to hit some 3s and make it interesting. So I think I'm trying to avoid Iona if I'm Virginia.
All right, so do you want to pick who Gonzaga would take?
Yeah, I think Gonzaga would take Iona / Prairie View. I take that one because Gonzaga has so much size. I mean, you talk about Rui and Clark. Neither team has any way of handling that whatsoever. So I think that's a pretty good slot to put them in.
Okay, now we have UNC. Between Sam Houston or the playing game between Norfolk and St. Francis. I guess same logic with a UVA. I think you would want to just scout one team instead of two, right? So
Yeah.
Sam Houston.
Yeah, let's slot in Sam Houston there.
Leaves Duke for the playing game.
Yes. Norfolk and
you could choose which line that we do next because the one line doesn't have a ton of juice.
Let's go to the 8-9 line. Let's have perhaps a lot of juice. And we'll.
Right. So first pick is UCF. You want to handle UCF?
Yeah, I'll do UCF. Yeah, this is really tough. I think if I'm UCF, I would want to play. Oh man, I think I'd want to avoid the zone because they don't have a ton of. It kind of takes away their size advantage a little bit, and doesn't look like it doesn't give them an advantage by playing tempo. So I think I'll say UCF wants Ole Miss just because Ole Miss doesn't have the size. They can make it difficult on Ole Miss's drivers with Taco, kind of in the paint. So just from purely a matchup standpoint, because I don't think there's a ton of I don't think there's one big juice matchup for UCF. We'll just go with Ole Miss.
Okay, now we have Iowa as the second 8 seed, and I mean Iowa is certainly headed in the wrong direction. I mean they are sliding. They have some shooters, so the fact that there's 3 zone teams on the board, right? We're talking between Washington, Baylor, and Syracuse. That's not necessarily a concern. They do also play traditional with the 2 bigs. So I'm not sure if Baylor plays smaller, right? With Mark Vital and Kegler kind of at those combo forwards, and then one of their centers. I think Iowa might want Syracuse. While Syracuse has the best rim protector, they have the worst offensive team, and I think Iowa could also has the ability to maybe pull Chukwu away from the basket with Garza, like we saw. Jordan Sperber put out a video of Virginia where they put Ty Jerome at the high post to pull Chukwu away from the basket. I think that they could do that with their center in Garza. So that's an interesting matchup. And then I think Cook would have a nice size advantage over Dolezaj and O'Shea Brissett. And Syracuse is probably the worst team out of the 3. So I'll go with Syracuse for Iowa.
Yeah, I would tend to agree there. And they didn't play in the 2K Classic because I remember they were in the same event, but I had to check to make sure. Yeah. They did not play, so they are eligible to play each other. That leaves us VCU and Oklahoma as the 8 seeds and Washington and Baylor as the 9 seeds. I think if I'm VCU, I think I'd rather play Baylor. I don't really have a ton of kind of analysis here. I just don't think this VCU team wants to get into a kind of shooting threes battle. I think Thibault has the chance to really wreak havoc. Washington's a weird team where I don't love their resume. I don't think they're super deserving. But at the same time, I really wouldn't want to play them either. So I think I'm going to choose Baylor for VCU. I think that's just easier of what's left on the board.
Yes. It also seems like Baylor's coming back to earth a little bit after kind of a hot middle of the season. Oklahoma's a team, sneaky 7-11 conference record, and is going to be safely in. And people don't seem to be too upset. They're kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? I've seen a lot of things. It seems like this year people are more angry with the total losses than the conference losses.
Yes.
So Oklahoma's gotten a nice pass with that, but they get Washington, which I think if I were picking that game, I think I'd pick Washington in terms of who would win. You mentioned despite Washington's lackluster resume. Do you want to go to the 3 line?
Yeah, why not? Let's do it. All right.
Okay, so LSU is the first 3 line. So they're probably going to be without Javonte Smart, which isn't a huge deal. And it looks like the Naz Reid thing wasn't related to the Will Wade stuff.
Yeah.
So they could have their full team.
I think Northern Kentucky's the here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Just looking at those, I think that they have the least amount of talent of those 4 teams. Georgia State's probably the most up and down, and Old Dominion's kind of limping to the finish a bit. But I think Yale, Old Dominion, and Georgia State all have more talent than Northern Kentucky.
Plus, NKU relies on McDonald down low. And I think Bigby Williams and Reed is just a really tough pairing to try to get for 6'7" big man and Drew McDonald to get shots off over. So I'd say NKU is the clear choice for LSU just based on that alone. I think if I'm Texas Tech, I want Georgia State because, and this just kind of works on this like the seed list as well. But I think if I'm Texas Tech, I want a team that's guard driven because I'm confident in the way we're going to force teams to not go middle and hit perimeter shots. I think you make Georgia State, who's on an elite 3-point shooting team, beat you from out there, and I think that's the right matchup there.
And also, I mean, they are not a good defensive rebounding team, Georgia State that is, and that's an area I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that Texas Tech, they play traditionally a lot with two bigs, so I think that they can really take advantage there, and they have a lot of positional size as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Which now we have Houston is deciding between Old Dominion and Yale. Now Old Dominion is limping to the finish. I don't think Yale's doing that hot either.
I would stay far away from Houston from ODU just because ODU is going to play like a pack line type style and grind it out. And if you're already going to be playing a style that grinds it out, I know it's kind of like a better version of themselves would be Houston, but I don't want a game that's going to be like that they're going to keep the offensive scoring down. And if they hit threes, it's deep trouble. So I think I choose Yale if I'm Houston, try to steal your thunder.
No, sounds good there. And I know Old Dominion has a pretty good shot blocker in former Friar Dejor Dickens. So I mean that could take away some of Houston's interior play. Having a mobile 7-foot shot blocker on the back. So that leaves Purdue versus Old Dominion, which I think is a pretty interesting game.
Yeah, there's always like 1 or 2, 3, 4 teams that have like legit juice in terms of an upset. I mean, I've picked one almost every year. I had the Stephen F. Austin one a couple of years back against West Virginia. That's my favorite bracket pick I've ever made. Was getting that right, because the hitting a 5-12, like whatever. But when you hit like one that no one's picking, it's either that one or I had Dayton to the Elite Eight the year they went to the Elite Eight, beating Syracuse, who no one in my area was picking against Syracuse because Syracuse is good and people hop on the bandwagon quick in Albany when Cuse is good.
I know that my least favorite pick I ever made was New Mexico in the Final Four with Steve Alford and Tony Snell and Alex Kirk, and they lost the first round to Harvard.
Tough. I lost Missouri in the first round when I picked them to be my champion in the Norfolk State year, so that was rough. Anyway, so what seed do we want to do next? You want to do the sixes and just kind of do the seed list type way?
Sure. Yeah,
all right.
Sixes.
All right. So Nevada, Villanova, Buffalo, and Auburn are our sixes. Our 11, St. John's, Ohio State, Florida, and TCU.
I mean, this is talk about teams limping to the finish. I mean, my first instinct was to say, all right, Nevada, you want to play St. John's because they're slumping so much.
No.
Ohio State and TCU are slumping, maybe even more. I think
I also
TCU,
don't want to match up with St. John's. Like, I don't want to play St. John's if I'm Nevada. Just like their talent level and their athleticism, especially in a one-game setting. Like, even if they're not prepared, like they've got dudes who can just go get it. So I think if I'm Nevada, I'm not taking St. John's.
I think TCU.
Interesting. I might have taken Ohio State because, well, it depends. If they don't have Wesson, I think you definitely take Ohio State because Ohio State
isn't Wesson coming back, or
they haven't announced it officially yet. Holtman said no comment. He'll let people know later in the week. So if Wesson were there, I think it's a different argument. But if no Wesson, I would say definitely you take Ohio State if you're Nevada, because Ohio State just isn't able to score, and Nevada's a really good defense.
So are we going with yes Wesson or no Wesson?
Let's count them in.
Count them in. All right. So TCU then.
Yeah, let's do it. I think TCU probably makes sense. They played each other last year, so there's familiarity there if you're Nevada. So I don't mind that. Villanova. I mean, they can't play St. John, so we can roll that out. I think if I'm Villanova, I want to once again avoid Ohio State if there's Wesson there, because he's kind of a bigger brute force that Villanova can't handle. So that kind of process of elimination gives me Florida.
I agree. I mean, in terms of size, they have Cosby Roundtree. That's really it. You know, they played Pascal a lot at the 5, and while he could pull Wesson away from the rim, Florida doesn't have an offensive threat. I mean, Stokes might be there in time, but that's more of just a style thing. I mean, they use Hayes there and Bassett, who aren't really offensive guys. So that's not going to hurt them too much. I mean, talk about regression. I mean, your Jalen Hudson's, your Kayvon Allen, those guys just haven't taken the steps that people thought, and I think Villanova would probably win this one. Agreed.
Yeah. So that leaves us with Buffalo and Auburn as the 6s, St. John's and Ohio State as the 11s. I'm just going to go with like a juice pick here. Buffalo St. John's would have a ton of juice because you're talking about two dynamic offenses who space you out. You're talking about, in-state, you got like Buffalo toughness, like blue collar versus St. John's in the city. I think there'd be a lot of fun with this game. I think just that would be so much fun. That would be like number 1 on my watch list.
Even more than the Mustafa Heron Bowl?
That would be fun too. But I want St. John's Buffalo.
Let's do it. St. John's Buffalo, which leaves Auburn with Ohio State, which I mean, Auburn's really turning it up. Ohio State's going in the wrong direction. I think this would be, set up that all the 6 seeds move forward here. Just a quick question on this line. Thinking about it like the opposite way, like if you wanted to generate the most likely 11 seed over 6 seed upset, what would you make the matchup?
Of those 4 games of the 4 6s and 4 11s we have right now, I would think
right. So like we said that Nevada playing TCU would be best for Nevada. Like which combination do you think would lead to the most likely 11 seed upset?
Oof. I think St. John's over. I mean, you can't do St. John's Nova, but like they already won that game.
Yeah.
I think St. John's Nevada would be the most likely upset.
I think, yeah. I mean, maybe St. John's Buffalo is more likely than St. John's Nevada.
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth because I think, like, if St. John's plays well, St. John's is better than Buffalo, I think.
Yeah.
Like, no one's doubted that they have top 15 talent. They just literally have no one who's willing to, like, compete up front, and they're just poorly coached. And they better win a game in the Big East tournament to lock themselves in.
And they have to play DePaul, who swept them.
Right, DePaul and Providence were the 2 teams they didn't want to see. I got to see them, so it'll be very interesting.
DePaul's front line isn't even that big. Like, Olajobi shoots a lot of jump shots. I mean, Reed is super slight. Butts is kind of whatever. So it was weird that they just can't beat DePaul. But
yeah, I mean, there was like a million fouls in that game at Wintrust. I remember that. That was pretty funny. Yeah, what do you want to do next? Which seed line? You want to do 4 13s?
Sure.
All right.
I think, clearly Kansas wants Hofstra, right? Hofstra's limping.
Yes. Agreed. Absolutely.
And they definitely played New Mexico State. Did they play Vermont this year? Or was that last year?
They did play Vermont as well.
It was just between Hofstra and the team that's won 13 straight. So
yeah.
Being Irvine.
I mean, I don't think Irvine has much juice. Like, I don't not only like juice like pump up wise with Juice, like I don't think they can really win a game. Like I just don't think they have a top level player on their team, and I really still kind of think you need one. So, but they're gonna grind you out. So I think, can we just stick UC Irvine with Kansas State so that Kansas State doesn't? So we just have one game we don't have to watch.
Yeah, I mean Kansas State. Their last year that UMBC Kansas State game was the worst NCAA tournament game I've ever watched.
Oh, it was heinously bad.
It was just offensive ineptitude at its finest. It was truly unbelievable.
And it would be just as bad, I think, with Irvine because Irvine doesn't have a guy who can get a bucket. Like I remember watching him against Butler, and they just looked completely overwhelmed offensively. And like I don't see how they're going to look better against Kansas State's really good defense. But I think UC Irvine can lock you down enough that it would be a tight game. So I think that works out well for all parties. I don't think there's conflicts with games having been played for either Florida State, Wisconsin, or New Mexico State, Vermont. So,
Florida State wants Vermont over New Mexico State, I would think. I mean, they have the length to really bother Anthony Lamb.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Forrest at point guards will certainly have a size and athleticism advantage over Vermont's guard. I think Vermont's gone to like a walk-on point guard. Is that right? Or maybe I have my teams. No. I think that was a Utah State, right?
Yeah.
Vermont, I think is using one of the Duncans at a point guard, right? They had benched Steph Smith, or
yeah. I mean, Smith coming in like a more scoring guard, I think, is kind of in the play. They don't have like one dominant ball handler, but yeah, I think that's probably the right play. I mean, Vermont. I mean, plus in terms of if you're choosing which team matches better, New Mexico State is one of the few teams that can match Florida State's depth because they play 14 guys, which is still absurd. But I mean, I think Florida State, Vermont. The one thing I would be wary of is I thought there was no way in the world that Vermont could compete with Purdue that one year because Vermont was relying on Lamb and some smaller guys, and Purdue was so big, and then they made a game that was like the Swanigan year. And then last year, like I didn't think Buffalo had a chance just because they don't have the size, and they did it. So I'm kind of wary of just like the blind, there's no way because of the size thing anymore. But I think that's a very fair point. New Mexico State, Wisconsin would be a very fun game. I don't think the talent level would be that big a gap, and I think New Mexico State has the bodies to run at Hap and a good coach in Chris Jans.
This two line out of the way.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, Kentucky. Between Montana, Colgate, Omaha, and Bradley, I think they don't want Montana, right? That's probably the best out of the four.
Don't want Bradley. They're hot.
So how about Omaha's probably the worst team between them and Colgate?
Yeah, I would agree. Let me just make sure they didn't play each other. That feels like a bye game that occurred. But I would say let's pencil that one in, pending my search. They did not play each other, so we're good to go.
Tennessee.
I think Tennessee should probably want Colgate just because they can be a lot more physical. Like Colgate is a very skinny team. They don't have a lot of bulk. They play Ivanowskis at the 5 from Northwestern. He's kind of like a skinny 5 who's skilled, but he's not super like bulky. So I think Colgate makes sense there.
And Michigan State, I'm sure they would want Bradley over Montana.
I would think so. Yeah. I think so. I mean, it's tough, but because Bradley's playing well, but I think you choose that over the senior backcourt with Ojuin and
Ahmad Rory.
Yeah, Ahmad Rory. Blanking on the name. Thank you. So I'm penciling Montana, Michigan. Wait, no, we shouldn't do that. They played last year.
Okay. So you want to switch Michigan, Bradley, and Montana, Michigan State?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of weird, right, to do like a 3-14 Michigan, Montana, and then the next year do 2-15 Michigan, Montana.
Yeah.
It would be funny, though. All right, so 2 left. We got 5-12s and 7-10s. Let's do the 7-10s. Leave the 5-12s the best for last.
All right, Cincinnati. They have Utah State, Minnesota, Seton Hall, or Texas. I mean, the thing with Texas is they are slumping. They are not great offensively, but they have a lot of size and they have a great rim protector.
Yeah, I just don't know if Texas is ever going to score against Cincinnati. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you want. I think
Texas.
If you're Cincinnati, you want Texas.
Yeah.
They're just like the worst team in my book. Iowa State. Who do they want? I think they probably want Utah State, right? Like a team that doesn't overwhelm them size-wise. A team that, because I don't think I want Minnesota if I'm Iowa State and have to deal with like Jordan Murphy and the big kid Arturu.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, I think Utah State. I mean, they have some size with Akeda, but they have a guy like Tyrese Halliburton. Could put a lot of length on Brock Miller. I mean, that could be a good matchup. They have good positional size with Shayok and Horton Tucker is a little undersized for the 4, but he's a really unique matchup. Maybe could take Utah State off guard because it is a Quinn Taylor. They're a 4-man. He's like a traditional big, right?
Yeah, he's more of a they put him at the 5 whenever Cade is in foul trouble. So and he gets run at the 5, but he can stretch a little bit, so that helps a little.
That would be a good matchup though for Horton Tucker. To kind of attack him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now Louisville already played Seton Hall and beat them, so they're going to be stuck with Minnesota. Which, I mean, if you want to make an argument for Power 5 games that aren't very watchable, I mean this might be your poster child.
Yeah. Does anyone want to watch Louisville, Minnesota over Louisville versus Belmont?
I mean, I don't. Well, it is the Patino Bowl.
Oh, no, that has juice actually.
Yeah, retroactively it has some juice, but not the teams themselves.
Rick should show up in all Adidas gear and just like support Louisville and like actively root against his son.
It's also the Matt Stockman Bowl.
Unbelievable. And then Wofford Seton Hall, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Just Fletcher McGee. That'd be a good game.
It's a very, very good game.
All right.
Leaves 5-12s. So we have Virginia Tech first, hopefully with Justin Robinson. But now they can't play either of the playing games because the playing games are NC State and Temple and Arizona State and Clemson. So that's 2 ACC teams. So they're deciding between Murray State and Liberty. So I'm guessing we're in agreement for Liberty. Is that?
Yeah, I think you definitely choose Liberty. I mean, I think there's a case to be made that Virginia Tech could struggle with the slow pace and the size of Liberty, and that they'd rather just play Murray and go guards versus guards and trust their guards over yours. But I think Liberty is the right choice. I think Murray's just like a better team, and you don't want to do that.
Okay, now does Marquette want Murray State, or do they want to scout for 2 teams in the playing game?
Can we just do an entertainment one and choose Murray State versus Marquette? Because Marcus Howard versus John Morant would be the juiciest matchup of the weekend.
Do it. And then Maryland is next. And I think Arizona State and Clemson are both worse than NC State and Temple.
Yes.
So they want Arizona State versus Clemson.
Which would be Mississippi State gets NC State and Temple. I just would love to see like Belmont and let's say Belmont and Lipscomb instead of Arizona State and Clemson, and then stick one of those teams and one of those mid majors in the other playing game on the other side.
Yeah, so we'll have Arizona State versus Belmont, and we'll have Temple versus Lipscomb.
Those would be good games. Those would be more fun. I don't think that Temple Arizona State has juice.
Yeah, I was trying to think if they had any connections. Yeah, I can't.
Rick Bird versus Fran Dunphy would be fun.
Yeah, old guys that are going to retire soon.
Oh yeah.
That coaching changes Twitter said I think that Rick Bird's going to retire.
Yeah, I hold off on the coaching changes Twitter until like actual coaching changes occur. Like I never trust that they're right, but at the same time, like I trust them enough to like think it might happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like scroll through theirs like every once in a while.
It is entertaining if nothing else.
They're like Tweet Storm where they do like every job and name like 3 people, but like not the same people is the most annoying thing I've ever experienced on Twitter. It doesn't make any sense because they're like, oh, well, we've already used so-and-so 3 times. But then, like, what's the point of this exercise then?
And then they'll be like, oh, Paul Hewitt for Georgia Tech just because, like, he got screwed. And we'll be like, okay. Like, whatever. It's not happening. Like, you're just randomly throwing in some stuff because you want something to happen. But it's just not happening.
You also want to, like, a second round, too, or is maybe like one seed line for the second round?
What do you?
Does UVA want the winner of UCF Ole Miss, Iowa Syracuse, VCU Baylor, or is that too complicated?
I think this might be too complicated for people who don't have the names in front of us on the podcast.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. So that I think will just about do for us. We have too many conference tournaments to pick. We could spend hours talking about them. But I've written about my conference tournament picks. Tweet at Brad if you have questions. Make him spend all night answering Twitter questions. I'm sure he'd have no better way of spending a Sunday night or Monday night for that matter, whenever you listen to this pod. Brad, any final thoughts before we wrap up a fairly snappy edition of the CBP Central podcast?
Nothing too crazy. I know. I think our discussion of the games this week was pretty interesting. But I mean, personally, I think the most interesting discussion comes with player movement and most importantly, coaching movement. So I can't wait until we get to start talking about this coaching movement stuff because it's really the most important. Like it's going to it's going to shape the future college basketball stuff. Like who's going to be the next LSU and Arizona coach is going to be huge.
Plus, we got UCLA. We could have job movement. I mean, Arkansas could open. You could have
Texas A&M,
Kelvin Sampson, or someone leaves Kelvin Sampson, and Houston opens. Like really good jobs that could flip.
And Virginia Tech could open.
Yes.
When Buzz Williams goes to play Shaka Smart.
Shaka Smart. If Texas doesn't get in, I mean, someone's going to throw $13 million at Shaka and make him not coach there anymore.
I mean, that was a home run hire. It just did not. I mean, like, how could you ever predict it? Because all of his assistants have done well, right? I mean, Will Wade was cheating, but I mean, he was rolling.
He did what he had to do to win.
Jamie and Christian's got it going. Mike Jones has it going. Mike Rhodes has it going.
Oh yeah, Mike Rhodes could get a job. I mean, they're really good.
And then does Radford just call up? Does VCU call up Mike Jones or Jamie and Christian
or Jeremy Ballard, or they bring back Shaka when he gets fired from Texas? That would be fun. We'll leave you on that thought, folks. Shaka back to VCU after Texas loses in the first round of the conference tournament and goes to the NIT. It's all happening. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back next week.